Welcome back, Steve from Leaner by Design with day 2 of the bonus videos on making water kefir. Yesterday I showed you how to take your brand new kefir grains which you've purchased online or from the Leaner by Design site if you're in the UK, how to get them into your water, how to create your water sugar fruit solution, getting the grains in, covering it, putting it in a warm place for 24 hours or so, and you end up with a nice fermented sparkling drink. There's a couple of other sections to the process here, a couple of other steps which I'm going to talk about today. Once you've completed and repeated these steps for 3 or 4 days, your kefir grains will be settled into their new environment and you'll be able to start increasing the amount of kefir you produce on a day-by-day basis. So let me just show you. I'll bring it up to the camera. You might be able to see, in fact I can see it quite well now. Let's have a look. Whether you can see that there are bubbles starting to rise, or they've been rising since yesterday. From this, it's a bit more difficult. I'm looking close up and I'm looking with light through and I can see bubbles rising. Also, a thing you might notice is that the fruit, which was sitting in amongst the grains, has now risen to the top and it's become very light in colour where it's been soaking there. So this amount of kefir with the amount of grains that I provide, or most other grain providers should offer you, plenty to do about half a litre of completed kefir for you to drink each day. I would keep doing this for 3 to 4 days and then slowly start to increase the amount of water. You'll be able to get up to creating roughly around a litre, and I do a couple of litres a day actually most days, and I end up with a couple of bottles like this. We drink quite a lot in my family, so it's great to be able to do, you know, litre and a half, couple of litres. So let me run you through what we're going to do for the second part of the process. So I'm going to remove that cover. Now, when you start doing larger quantities of kefir and you're using a bigger jar with hopefully a wider neck, it's much easier to get a slotted spoon, get it into the jar, take the raisins or sultanas off the top, and then strain your kefir. You can just pour the whole lot straight through a sieve, but then you've got, 3 tablespoons of sultanas that you've got to fish out. And when I first started, that's what I did until I suddenly had this sudden thought that I could just fish most of them out to start with, and it makes life a lot easier. So this just fits inside, but I can get most of these. And I'll say it is a slotted spoon. You could do it with a normal spoon, but slotted is obviously a lot easier. And I'm putting those just into I've lost a couple already, into a separate bowl. You can eat these if you want. I mean, they don't taste too bad, but I usually just throw them because they've gone really light in colour. A lot of the sugars and sweetness has gone from them. It's been devoured by your hungry grains. So, but you can do this, you could do water kefir with just sugar and water. You don't need to worry about the sugar because it's been used to feed these grains. But I like to put some fruit in. It gives it a nice colour and it does add a nice taste to it. I've done both, but fruit always sort of works well for me. And to pick up a packet of organic raisins or something, it's really, I mean, it's not much of a cost to it. They last for quite a while. You're using 2 or 3 dessert spoons at a time, and that's when you're doing, I use the same amount of raisins whether I'm doing half a litre like this or a whole litre. It's absolutely fine. So I've got most of my raisins, still a few sitting in the bottom. That's not a problem, but I'm going to put those to one side. So the ones that are sitting in the bottom, you just pick them out manually, but the process I've used there with a slotted spoon makes it a damn sight easier than picking them all out manually. So now we've got our, down a little bit lower, sorry. We've got our water kefir with just a few raisins in it. And there's literally, there's 8 or 10. So I'm going to pick those out by hand. Always do this, you've just washed your hands. We'll try and avoid introducing any unwelcome bacteria. Okay, so those raisins are done. There's my grains. Don't know if I can show you those. There they are. And they will, I mean, it's obviously not noticeable to the eye yet, but they will have increased in size and quantity just since yesterday. You get to a tipping point where when you're doing litres at a time, you end up with a huge amount of grains. And the thing you can do is you can give some away to friends. You can start another batch in another bottle. And this can be bottled up and stored in the fridge. It's fine. But what I will say is, once you've got an awful lot of grains, you need to realise that your fermentation process will be so much quicker as well. And I've done this where I've started a new batch in the morning and it was ready by the evening. It didn't need 24 hours. There were so many grains. So I would certainly build up a nice quantity of grains, work out roughly how many you need to make a good batch of kefir, 18 to 24 hours. So every day you've got some fresh on the go, and try and stick with that quantity. And if you need to throw the others away, throw them away, but give them away otherwise. It's always nice to share. So this is where we are now. Okay, so I am going to just balance these grains on top of there. Now, like I said, storage afterwards. You want to be storing them in a sealed container. We didn't do that to start with when we're fermenting them, because there's a lot of gas build up and we don't want any explosions of the jar with too much internal pressure. But when you want to store it, bearing in mind that this will still be, although the grains have gone, the bacteria in here, this will still be fermenting. And you can do what's called a second ferment, where you put your strained water kefir into a kilner jar, kilner bottle type thing, or even a jam jar with a lid on it. And that's what I'm going to do now. So let's move those. And I'm just going to pour this in. Always, when you're doing bottles, jars, whatever, make sure you do leave a little bit of space at the top. Obviously on this one it's not a problem. Bit of space, 3 inches at the top, to allow for that build up of gas. And what you can do then is put your lid back on your jar, seal it up. Before putting it in the fridge, give it a couple more hours, maybe up to 3 or 4, in the same warm place that you do your fermentation. This will allow some gas to build up in there. It will become more carbonated, and then you can put it away in the fridge. So you have your first ferment covered with a cloth or a kitchen roll or a coffee filter. You strain it, you have your second ferment, 2 to 4 hours in a relatively warm place, usually the same place that you do this. Could just leave it out on the worktop in the kitchen, it's fine. And then refrigerate it. So this has been in the refrigerator overnight. If you're going to store it for a long time, like a week or something, it's worth doing what we call burping the bottle or the jar. Things do calm down when it's refrigerated. It's not actively building up more and more gas, but every day it's worth just, if you've got 4 bottles, it's worth just cracking them open, releasing the gas, sealing them back up again. If you've drunk some of this and you're down to halfway, not so critical, because there's plenty of space for that gas to fill. So let me see if I can burp this one. They're not always super fizzy, but no, didn't. Because I did that last night, so it hasn't obviously built up quite so much gas. Different batches, you always kind of think you're going to do the same thing and every batch will end up the same. but they rarely do. They tend to, yeah, sometimes it'll be very, very fizzy, sometimes not so fizzy. Yeah, that depends to some extent on the length of time you've left it, the temperature, etc. But I've certainly found sometimes doing almost exactly the same thing, you'll get a really fizzy batch and you'll get a less fizzy batch. So just be aware of that and just burp the bottles every 24 hours if you're going to be storing it for a while. Okay, so we've looked at our kefir, ready to go. That one will be left out for a couple of hours. So where are we now? We've made our first batch. We now want to do pretty much the same and make our second batch. We're going to continue this for 3 to 4 days and then start to increase the quantity of liquid. I usually go from around 2 cups, which is 500 ml. After 4 days, I'll put an extra cup in, which is 750 ml. After a week, so a week in total from my first ever batch, I'll then put another, so we're up to about 1 litre then. Sugar quantity, I tend to range it between 65 to 75 grams of sugar for a 500. If I'm going up to 1 litre, I don't usually double that. I'll maybe go up to about 90 grams. And it just seems that it depends how many grains you've got, but with a given amount of grains, they don't particularly need more and more. You don't need to double the sugar. But obviously you do need to increase it, and I would just play with that. There's no firm and fast rules. I'll use the same amount of raisins, whether I'm doing half a litre or 1 litre, you can increase it. The thing with fermentation, which is great, is providing you've got enough sugar, it really doesn't matter that much, and you can just tweak the recipes, and I recommend you do tweak the recipes to your liking. You can use different types of sugar. You can use a muscovado, it tends to give a sweeter taste. If you ferment for a shorter time, it will have more sugar content, so it'll be sweeter. I tend to like mine somewhere in between, not too dry but not too sweet. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to repeat our process. So, same as yesterday. I'm going to put my sugar into my jar. I'm going to add 2 cups of water. Like I said, if you notice from the product that we made, although it wasn't, stirring in the raw cane sugar, not as easy to stir in as just white granulated sugar, but I stirred it in and it's all gone. It hasn't stayed sugar sitting in the bottom of the jar, so just do your best. You don't need to worry too much. Okay, I'm going to put in my raisins. Continue stirring. I use a chopstick quite often for this sort of thing. It works quite well. Okay, we're there. Now the grains. Now this is always the fun bit, especially when you've got a lot more. Getting them back into the jar can be... I promised myself I'd get myself a wide bottom funnel to do that, but I haven't got around to it and it seems okay so far. So we're going to pour those in, give it a bit more of a stir. And I'm going to add to this today, a bit revolutionary, I put in half a lemon. Just drop it in. And I'll just stir again. You could do a slice of lemon, a couple of slices of lemon, it's fine, however you want to do it. But half a lemon works. Half a lemon for 1 litre as well is perfect. Okay, so we now have our second day's water kefir production. Absolute piece of cake. We're going to put the lid back on. We're going to go and put that away in a cupboard, same place. We're going to put our yesterday's water kefir in the same place, couple of hours time, put that in the fridge, probably drink that tomorrow. If we're going to leave it for a while, or we've got a full bottle, we're going to burp it every 24 hours just to make sure we don't wake up in the morning or wake up in the middle of the night with an explosion and you go to your fridge and it's full of glass and there's water kefir all over the floor. So that is it. Thanks for taking the time to watch this second bonus video. If you want to make water kefir and you live in the UK, I sell grains, really good quality grains, all produced in organic sugar and with organic fruit. You can get them anywhere, it's fine by me, don't worry about that. I also have got in this free video series videos on making milk kefir, and I recommend you look at that as well because it's a really great and versatile product. So thank you so much. Any questions, send me an email, leave a message on the site, leave a comment somewhere, and I will get back in touch with you. Good luck, enjoy your kefir, and I know your gut will enjoy it too.